Go time. Right. First things first, what are we? Good afternoon, Hannah. So I today have got the lovely Hannah Stewart with me, who is a yoga teacher. I'm going to let her go into everything right now about who she is and what she does. But good afternoon. Thanks
Good
for coming and joining me.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm honoured.
Good. Thanks very much. So fill us in. Tell us a bit about yourself, what you do, etc., etc.
Okay, so starts off very boring. I started practicing yoga. I worked out 16 years ago, after the birth of my eldest child. So that was my buy-in. Very naive at the beginning. Didn't really have a teacher. Sort of self-taught. DVDs. The day of the
Classic.
DVD. The day of Rodney Yee on DVDs. That was my my sort of like initial path into yoga. And about 4 or 5 years in, I had sort of gone through a few different teachers that I didn't really connect with, and then found my current teacher, Stephen, who you won't find on Instagram because he's far too humble for such things as that, keeps himself quite quiet. And yeah, spent quite a few years sort of studying yoga with him. And he comes from, his mum was a student of Iyengar. And she was a student of Iyengar for about 20 years. So there's a sort of traditional element that I learned from, even though he didn't teach under the Iyengar name, which meant there was a little bit more freedom with what we learned. He is a lecturer in osteopathy. And he's only a young guy, he's only in his 30s, he's a little bit older than me. So he has this incredible blend of traditional yogic base with very up-to-date anatomy teachings, which is amazing. And I did my training with him 10-ish years ago now, I suppose, and was very happy just, teaching the odd few classes a week. Didn't really have any grand plans to do anything more with it. Things got a little bit busier over the years, and then it was about 3 or 4 years ago that I suggested he brought back this teacher training. I think they only did 4 or 5 rounds of it. So quite a lot of the local teachers are taught under this Victor Foundation. He relocated to Wales and decided it wouldn't be a practical thing to sort of bring back this teacher training. So I trained with Emma Epton, who is my homie, I call my home slice, my business partner, and we decided that actually let's rewrite the 200-hour training completely into something that we believed in, and so that's when Yoga Reloaded was born.
Lovely. That's what I've just come in. Nice. So with that, I mean, that kind of, it sounds like we probably started similar times. I was about 15, 16 years ago as well now, I think. I was trained, 7 years, just over 7.5 years now it's been for me. But yeah, kind of, I guess, similar-ish journeys, although I've literally never had a teacher.
That's so cool.
Ever. Like, apart from Upendra, who's my meditation teacher in India, who I still stay in touch with, never had a teacher. So it's kind of just blagging it as I go along and just trying to figure out stuff. So obviously with that Yoga Reloaded, which I can't even remember how I probably found you on Instagram, in all fairness. Maybe a hashtag yoga wanker or something, potentially. Something along those lines. But you and I have definitely got a very similar path that we've trod, whatever the correct thing for that would be in English. And that's kind of trying to, I guess, bring a greater understanding of the human anatomy into the more traditional realm, I think, because I think it can be fairly understated that some of what even Iyengar and stuff said was pretty out there as to what actually functions for people on a day-to-day basis, or even just a person-to-person basis. But you've, in your training, I know you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, have you done some of the I forgot what it's called, like the kin stretch or something like that. Have you
I've
done
done, yeah,
I've
done the FRC and the
FRC,
FRA,
that's right.
which did really open my eyes to another perspective on everything. And it was funny because I'd almost come to these conclusions myself from just years of my own practice of why does this feel like shit in my body, why are we forcing these things? And so maybe quite early on in my practice I realized that if I contract my muscles, it feels much better than if I try and relax them. I don't seem to get injured as much, and forcing stretches and things like that. And I sort of like naturally found my way into the eccentric training. And then sort of to go and do something like FRC made me go, oh, this is why I do that. Now I understand why this is good for my body.
Just briefly, sorry, for anyone who's listening who has no idea, can you just explain what FRC is?
So it's functional range conditioning, or it's functional range systems. And I think they describe it as a mobility training or joint mobility training, where you sort of understand what is needed to increase range of motion and capacity in the joints safely. And there's branches that come off of it, such as kin stretch, which I think is really gaining momentum now as
all of this stuff kind of goes over my head a little bit, because I see kind of FRC and kin stretch. I literally don't know what for myself, kind of there's obviously all from this, you kind of got cars and what the other things they call them, rails and pails and whatever. Again, this stuff has always just kind of gone over my head, because I think I've always just done it.
And
without realizing there's a name for it, if that makes sense.
I do say what I think, so this might come out wrong. I think that FRC is a brilliant system. It's packaged incredibly. You could go and do the training and you would come away from it an incredibly knowledgeable teacher, but sort of having been through that rabbit hole now and coming out the other side of this, it's like Iyengar yoga, like all of these things, it's a very well packaged marketing system, which doesn't even though I can't disagree with anything that's taught on there, it's very factual. It's backed by lots and lots of scientific studies and things like that, so you can't really argue with the content that's taught. But something that didn't sit well with me was the term mobility. The mobility is the biggest buzzword out there at the moment.
So big.
Mobility practice and all this. And then you kind of like, when you delve deeper into that, you realize that the term mobility doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean active range of motion. So we sort of come full cycle to stretching once again being vilified, as it has been for years and years now. And really all of these things that you talk about, from kin stretch and FRC, the pails and rails and everything, is basically it's active stretching, or static active stretching. So it's glamorized,
just a new coat of paint on something.
Just a new coat of paint on something. So it's like I say, it's a brilliant perspective. It's a really cool place to go into, but again, it's half of a complete idea. I
think for me, this is kind of where I struggle with a lot of these things, and I touch my toes in most of these, and never actually, I do tend to go and do some kind of training in something, and then I kind of go, it's kind of all right, and there's stuff I can take from it, but actually it, again, from my perspective, is a bigger picture. It's like one tiny little part of a much bigger picture, which is, I think, from what I see of what you do, it's kind of that thing of constantly trying to build out a bigger picture to give them, that the word whole is a holistic approach, whatever is, another buzzword, but it is that kind of more holistic, like, how can we move and breathe and activate and whatever, everything in a way which actually isn't just breaking things down into a single spot as such, which is what I guess for me has always been, especially the work I do with Gary, has been, Gary's all about big everything, well, not everything is actually really small, but like a whole body movement, rather than it being like, let's just isolate a single joint as such. I mean, there is aspects of it, but it's how can we put it into like a much more holistic whole body thing. So nice. So from there, excuse me, the obviously good, thanks. So what other elements have you found that you've ended up bringing into your teacher trainings and whatever else? Then sort of, obviously I know you're doing another teacher training soon, aren't you?
Yeah, well, what we do a yearly 200 hour.
Right.
This is only the second year,
Right.
and our teacher training came from our teacher immersion program, which was this is going to open up another area of conversation. There, you know, we've studied lots of things over many years for a long time, and it's disturbing to see how little information 200-hour training gives you. I think a lot of what they teach you is a complete waste of time. Being able to name and define every bone and muscle in the body doesn't give you an understanding of how things
color it in.
Yeah, exactly. Color it in, and then and like, you know, I've been teaching for a long time, and I forget the names of muscles and bones and things because it doesn't correlate to how well someone can move.
Yeah.
So we designed the immersion program. We were like, okay, let's take already teaching teachers and just give their teaching a little bit of an update. Let's you know, talk about modern anatomy, and modern movement and what we understand now. And it changes all the time. This immersion, like, we keep adding stuff into it. This new one that we're doing is quite heavily focused on breath, rather than, you know, too much on the physical body. So the 200-hour became a natural progression from this immersion program, where we're like, okay, if we've done a sort of 30 or 40-hour immersion, let's do a 200-hour teacher training from this, and let's go from the beginning. So I suppose it is based around how individual parts of the body move. So like you say, it's, you know, I don't believe in, you know, just moving one joint, but if you understand how a joint moves in isolation, you can apply that to the entire rest of the body. So when you take whatever asana you're looking at, you're gonna be like, well, obviously if your hip can't do that, then it's gonna compensate higher up the chain or lower down the chain or whatever. So we're just like, rather than you being able to instruct a perfect Virabhadrasana 2 or whatever, what's the point if you don't understand what the hips are meant to do or what your ankles are meant to do? And, you know, so it's based around that. So we don't actually have, in our teacher training, we don't have any postures in the manual at all.
Right.
They build their own.
Okay,
so
cool.
We like to say to them, like, you are going to take your build your own manual that you can use photographs, you can use stickman drawing or whatever it is, so that you can break down and understand these poses and what they ask out of your body.
So you get them to like take a pose and then break it down so they understand what the hips and the shoulders and whatever else might be doing for that pose, and they actually get to and
have it as an ongoing thing. You know, it might not be finished by the end of the training, or you might go back and add things.
I was going to say, it's probably one of those things of really, I mean, there's just so many thousands of variations of poses and stuff. Do you know what I mean? You can always go back and go, well, we'll take that Warrior 3 variation of that, and oh yeah, that's actually that hip and knee is doing something completely different to that variation.
And that's the thing, you read one book and it will tell you this is how a Warrior 3 looks. You read another book and it's just like, okay,
I remember doing
way.
No, I remember doing a training with, I can't remember who it was now. I think it was with Carling and Patrick Beach at some point, and like Carling was talking about how when years ago she'd done a training with one of Iyengar's main students or something like that. I might be making that up, but it was something like that. And she was basically saying how, like on yoga, you know, the positions where he said this is the optimal position was the optimal position when he felt essentially a release of energy, if you like. He felt like a ping, and that was perfect. That's where you have to get to get this. And you know, not really considering the fact that you know, again, what he feels in his body is going to be very different to what somebody else feels in theirs, and what their body's even capable of achieving, I guess.
I've read something somewhere many years ago that was, you know, he created a manual for the Westerner. He created a thing that, you know, all of his teachers would take this ideal, this 90-degree knee bend, and all of these things that were taken as gospel for years, because it was the safest thing at the time to do for the Western body. But you know, we are, our bodies are shit, you know, compared to an Eastern body. So you know, they're already pretty unbound from their habits, and we basically, I think this is what yoga is becoming today, is perhaps, you know, you unpick the history of yoga and how it's like unraveled over the years, and now we're at a position now where we need to prepare bodies for asana. Whereas asana used to be the prep for, you know, all the
meditation. No, that's really true. It is, there is a real I don't know, I've just come from teaching the footballers today, and do you know what I mean? I don't do a lot of yoga with them now. It's more kind of the movement therapy stuff, but it is it's kind of fairly shocking the ranges of motion that they have, especially for athletes, to be able to kind of have a, do you mean if you put them into a yoga class, they would not be in a good place to be accessing majority of what, you know, should be a fairly beginner's safe-ish pose. But and then you said as well, open up try and go back to remember what you said, because you said something which grabbed my attention. I've kind of forgotten because we've waffled. But you said that something was going to open another can of worms. And it's gone. But there we go.
Then the whole how yoga teaching has.
That's right. Yeah.
It is.
It is. Yeah.
Today.
So I mean, so you did your training obviously in the UK then, and your training was with your still current kind of teacher. So you felt your training was a good grounding of.
It's really hard.
Or do you look back on it now and think maybe it wasn't so as such?
I think there was I'm probably the only yoga teacher that has never been to India, you know, or done any of that, and in a way I'm quite proud of that. Which is, you know, I'm a Western yoga teacher. I teach Westerners. So obviously Stephen's mum was trained by Iyengar, and Stephen's teacher himself, he's from India, from Kerala, and he used to go out there yearly to study with him. And so I think some the elements of that tradition kind of like bled into his teaching, which was, you know, very much the practice and orders coming thing, very much the, just, you know,
keep
eventually go. And so I could sort of see at times he was conflicted by what he understood and what he was teaching in osteopathy versus what was traditional, you know. And so, yes, it was a relatively good basis at the time. But it still took me years and years to unlearn, unpick, and you know, get to a point where I felt like what I was teaching was useful. But at the time, you know, like 15, 16 years ago, it wasn't very many yoga teachers.
I was going to say it was a completely different world, really, wasn't it? I mean, I say, you know, it wasn't. I remember being certainly in Suffolk, even when I did my training, which was nearly 8 years ago now. Will be 8 years in. Whatever it is in October, but like when I came home, I mean, I could probably count on one hand the amount of yoga teachers in Suffolk, and you know, now you can count to, you know, so many. But yeah, God, my brain's struggling today. Sorry. So it took you a few years to unpick it. Did you ever, in that time, kind of practice any of the other kind of traditions, if you like? Did you ever do like an Ashtanga practice or?
I went through all of them.
Did you?
I was like, I think you know, you less so nowadays maybe. I went through Facebook a little bit lost, where I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't really know what I want to do. I know that the Iyengar thing didn't really work for me. I sort of had this. You know, ego is always an issue, isn't it? And you know, I had a very big ego at the time because I'm relatively naturally strong and not flexible. So stuff like arm balances, I found easy. So I was like, I'm going to be the teacher that teaches the arm balances, and it was very much about what I could do and not what I could teach people, or what what I could teach people, but not really what they needed.
Yeah.
And like that was a bit of a harsh sort of reality, that it means fuck all. Your own practice means fuck all. And
totally.
As soon as you have that realization that you know your job is to serve people, your job is to help people, and that took me a couple of years to actually really work that out.
I remember coming back from India, and like I'm the same. Do you know what I mean? I'm naturally like physically like strong, like body weight wise. I can throw myself around and do all the jazzies, apart from handstands, bloody handstands, still can't do them. But I can do, and I was a bit like, oh, I can't wait to come home. We're going to be doing this and this and this. And then I came home to Suffolk, where, you know, it's not London. Do you know what I mean? Where everyone's, you know, either middle-aged women or, you know, they're guys, and you know, they haven't moved for 30 years essentially, and then you kind of go, okay, this is what I wanted, what I was hoping, you know, it's going to be the big sexy Instagram, you know, perfect. And then you come home and you kind of go, oh, actually we're going to work towards like trying to make child's pose feel comfortable. Do you know what I mean? And it's kind of like, and you kind of go, actually kind of that thing that is sold to you of being a yoga teacher, or that, I don't think that's maybe a bit unfair. I think the thing that people see on Instagram and think, I want to be a yoga teacher because that looks sexy and that looks amazing and I can do all that, and then you kind of get into it and it's not that at all. And that was definitely me, I think, for that too. So you kind of say you went through them all and kind of tried to find your ego so what would you now say is your kind of practice?
It's really unsexy now. I think that's, you know,
if any of you, I'm going to obviously put in the show notes for this to obviously all of Hannah's Instagram and whatever else. I love it because Hannah does kind of similar to me, where the main photo that she'll put on for her, like, come do my class, you know, come join my class or something like that, is just the most unattractive. Well, maybe that's a bit harsh on you, but you know, it's the most unflattering. Let's go unflattering. It's like me too. All of my breathing ones are where I'm kind of doing this. And then I just like snapshot, that'll do.
I think that's definitely, I want to take the glamour out of yoga. That's my mission on Instagram, is to just get rid of that. I came across Yoga Detour a few years ago, and that really, I
wanted to ask you about that.
Yoga Detour as a practice really excited me, and Cecily has been through everything like that we've sort of gone through. She definitely falls in the category of being much more flexible than I ever naturally was. So she went through Ashtanga, had this ridiculously obsessive Ashtanga practice, you know, drank the Kool-Aid for years, and then you sort of go, well, this starts to feel like shit in my body, you know, you're pushing into these back bends that don't do anything. And you know, the whole problem, I think, being is that yoga teachers aren't taught movement, they're taught yoga. They're taught how to teach asana, and it's got nothing to do with movement. And so, you know, she detoured completely and sort of went and learned from lots of other different, you know, modalities, and combined everything and created this incredible resource for yoga teachers of the detour method, which is, you know, it's based on strength and conditioning stuff. It's based on mobility. Again, still have an issue with that word. But you know, that sort of thing of just, you know, stripping it back a little bit, and you know, I think quite often the way I teach is it will look really like nothing. It looks so unspectacular, but it will be the most excruciating you know, thing that you're doing, because you're actually waking stuff up and you're actually working stuff properly. But I struggle to define things too much, because when you, like a bit like yourself, when you focus on one path too much or one style, it becomes quite limiting. So like, you know, like sometimes it'll be a nidra that I teach, sometimes it'll be you know, a deep stretching practice, right, you know, and other times it'll be the active range of motion stuff.
So is that for the same for your self practice as well? Do you find that? Yeah.
Absolutely. Although I would say naturally I'm much harsher on myself with my own practice, I have limited time to practice. Pathetically stupid, isn't it? But I'm going to use it. So I would I would say that I am, generally I'm quite regimented in what I do in my physical practice. But like you say, you've got meditative practices that are very different, and restorative practices that are very different. So
I would say so. I mean, at the moment I've just found that like the practice for my brain to, i.e. like try to find if we kind of take yoga back to the asana, back to what it should be, I guess, if you like, i.e. a place to set you up for meditation, set you up for pranayama, set you up for my movement practice, asana practice, is not an asana practice at the moment. Like I don't use my mat essentially at the moment. I haven't used a linear mat for probably like the last 3 or 4 months. So it's kind of just, it's an exploration across the floor, and it's kind of bringing in elements of floor work and things like that as well. But it's the same exploration of the body through a greater 3-dimensional space, I guess, which is for me is quite a nice thing. But I know I'll be bored of that soon as well, and I definitely have this thing. I'm sure I definitely couldn't be an Ashtangi. I did my training in Ashtanga, and you talked about how Cicely kind of broke herself type thing. I've been practicing Ashtanga for, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years, maybe ish, on and on. And I don't say practicing, I mean like twice a week or something, sort of self-practice. And then I went to do my training, and it was suddenly 4 weeks of daily 2-hour Ashtanga practice, and my knees felt like they were going to explode. My hamstrings felt, by week 3, my hamstrings just felt raw. And I actually said, can we do some fucking yin, please? Can we do something like outside of some Ashtanga? And they were like, no, we're an Ashtanga school type thing. And I was like, but when I qualified, I then became like one of the free students, essentially the free teachers who they kind of got to teach drop-in classes. So I said, well, if you want to do, because I kept banging on, if you want to do it, just do it. You do it then. So I did it, and we had the biggest classes, drop-in classes they've ever had. I did 3 of them, and we had over 45 people for all 3 of them. And it was just like, and to me was just this thing of, we need to slow down. Do you know what I mean? People actually, it's all very well doing an Ashtanga practice where you get to look sexy and do like forearm balances or back bends and stuff, but actually I think that's the last thing as a society, certainly in the West, because let's face it, everyone at that school and in Goa was all Western anyway. And I think trying to step back and get people to slow down is kind of what's more important. Which I guess, if we go back to your current training with that thought, you were just saying, or your immersion that you're just kind of about to restart, you said there's a lot more kind of breath work and stuff in it now. So what's been kind of the influences, if you like, or where are you kind of directing that side of things, and what's brought you to that place to think, actually this time we need to focus more on that?
I think it's just it's a natural progression. It's like when you get shiny object syndrome, don't you, when you're teaching? And so yes. FLP was very shiny object for both myself and Emma. Emma actually is a kinstretch instructor. She's amazing, and she does a brilliant job there. But we had a conversation a year or year and a half ago. We were just like, actually, we're neglecting yoga now. We've sort of like, we're missing the point, and we came to yoga because we love it. And and interesting, like what you said about the Ashtanga practice just a moment ago, is like, you wouldn't do the same thing 6 days a week normally, would you? Like, you wouldn't.
I definitely wouldn't.
No, I mean, like, some people maybe would. I wouldn't run 6 days a week. I wouldn't squat 6 days a week. I wouldn't weightlift. So why are we doing an Ashtanga practice 6 days a week? And why do we become so obsessive about this sort of like need to constantly push and push and push and push. That's not what we need in our bodies.
No.
It's not what we need in our minds. So yeah, we sort of like, so pranayama, I have never professed to teach it because I believe it's such a massive subject. And I think that you need to be incredibly well practiced and incredibly knowledgeable in that. And I, as of now, I don't know many true pranayama teachers. I know people that profess to be after their 200 hours because they've learned a bit of, you know, alternate nostril breathing. Yeah, they're pranayama experts now. Or they've, you know, they can do the best Darth Vader Ujjayi breath going, so therefore pranayama expert. So it's like I'm not confident enough to call myself that because it's such a powerful and phenomenal practice, and you know, I don't want to put myself out there as that. So you know, I think the whole COVID thing was a real eye-opener to the importance of good breathing. And I believe that everyone now has read the James Nestor book, and you know, I think that was a real breakthrough for a lot of people. But I'm picking my way through the Oxygen Advantage training. It's something that I'm taking my time with to do it. Emma's done it, and so we were like, I think breath needs to be spoken about.
Yeah.
Because dysfunctional breathing affects every system of the body. So why are you trying to fix the, you know, skeletal system or the, you know, musculoskeletal system when you're not addressing the primal root of everything, which is the breath? So yeah, it sort of has come from that. And I think if you're a yoga teacher and you're sometimes made to believe that you should be teaching pranayama because your 200 hour taught you 5 different types of pranayama, so therefore you must bung these into every lesson. But it's like, actually, there's, you know, just being confident in being able to lead diaphragmatic breath is probably just such an important foundation to have.
Definitely. And I think that's
I know you're really experienced with this stuff because you
I mean, yeah, this is my kind of, I guess, my geeky, what the bit I, you know, the last 3 or 4 years has been my deep dive into. And again, I do not profess to be a pranayama teacher by any means, because I don't. Now, let's be careful how I say this. I have no problem with hyperventilation practices. I even do a little bit of it myself. But the last thing I think, despite what James Nestor says, and he says, you know, I don't see that hyperventilation practice, excuse me, just my chair over the rug. I don't see that hyperventilation practices are where the majority of people should be going right now, you know. And my issue, if you like, with Wim Hof is he's, again, a bit like Ashtanga, a bit like whatever. It's big and sexy, and it's really like great for Instagram because you can jump in ice and you can do these strong practices. Now, I've probably said on some of the other podcasts I've done, I'm not sure, but like I've got people coming to me for breath work who've done strong hyperventilation practices who are now basically having problems because of it.
Of course.
And yeah, and there's nothing wrong. And it's much like you said at the beginning, we're now having to prep people for asana. We're trying to have to prep people's bodies to do the asana, which was the prep for the pranayama, and the problem is people, in my view, are jumping into big sexy practices, i.e. and doing it for half an hour, and then they're lying down and they're doing big breath holds. And, you know, I had a chat, let's say a disagreement, whatever, with someone on Instagram about, he was just saying how, you know, he's held his breath for like 3 minutes with Wim Hof's breathing and whatever else with hyperventilation. And that's not what people need. Like, we're such a highly strung society that actually, from my perspective, and, you know, this is where my teaching comes in, like if my breath work I do every week, it's let's slow things down. And we're literally going to go, like you said, let's comfortably teach someone to diaphragmatically breathe. And, you know, when I came back from India and did my, you know, and I've never really been into hyperventilation practices. I don't get it. It doesn't really sit with me that great. But, you know, I was definitely like, oh, I love doing like all these different breathing techniques. And the more I've studied and practiced in myself, the more I've realized that everyone needs to just do the basics better, i.e. breathe. Like,
and you know, like, people have lost the ability to self-soothe as well. You know, down regulation is, you have to know how to do it with your breath to
totally
benefit the system. And yeah, and it's,
I mean,
it's so vital, and it's
I
so
don't know
simple.
it is so simple. I mean, I don't know if you follow, and again, I've probably said I'll put it on the bottom of most of these podcasts, but there's a page called Human Health Performance, HHPF, on Instagram, Health and Human Performance Foundation, and they just posted a thing yesterday, and the title of it, which just really struck, like, was anxiety is in your body, not your mind. And it was a kind of a bit of a paper write-up about that. And this is where I'm kind of taking a lot of my work these days, is trying to get people to realize that a lot of these kind of anxieties and depressions and whatever else are driven through stress, and actually the best tool we have is breath. Like, because it's the only real tool we have over our autonomic nervous system. And so it's trying to, you know, pull that in. And actually, for the people who want to do asana, if you learn to relax, God, that shit gets easier. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, exactly. I think people expect it to be harder work. And I think that's the problem. I think if people have suffered, you know, anxiety or depression for years and years, they think it's unfixable through something as simple as breath. And, you know, they're like, but I need this, and I need this, and I need this, and I need all these other things. And society sort of like made people believe that. And, you know, when you actually do get people to just breathe properly, you know, I'm not saying it's a magical cure for everything. And I know that there's many other factors and many other mental health issues and stuff that could do this. But I think for the most part, if anxiety is a newer thing for you, then, you know, breathing.
I think we also have the thing of, like, you suddenly have to take responsibility for yourself. And as you kind of said about self-soothing and whatever else, having the ability to know that it's all on you. Do you know what I mean? And this is, again, one of the things I love about breath work, is that what I love about Gary's kind of movement work is the fact that no one else can fix you.
No.
Do you know what I mean? I mean, for one, why would you want to be fixed? Because if you look that up, it means to be, like, essentially stuck in one position, like to be fixed into one place, which sounds like a terrible idea. But actually being able to breathe your way to a better health and move your way to a better health can only ever happen through you having some discipline to put it into practice. And I think in our society, that's an issue. Because, again, it's not the magic pill. Do you know what I mean? There's all those memes of, like, one massive queue and one no queue, like, take the pill, you know, do some more breath work, and no one's in the breath work queue. So nice. So that's obviously what you're bringing into your current thoughts of immersion. Where do you reckon you'll go next then?
I have no idea. And that's like, it's so nice to work with Emma, because she's very much like this as well. We're very like, we'll do one when we're ready to do one. We don't have a business plan as such, where we're like, we'll have X amount a year, we'll concentrate on this and this. And it's sort of like, it really does come from an authentic place of, okay, so we'll look at, like, the outline that we've had from the last immersion, and we'll go, okay, let's swap that out, let's take that out, I think this is more important, this needs more focus and stuff. So even though obviously we do cover some physical stuff and some useful tools for teaching, I think, you know, we've actually, as well as the breath, we've started to bring into it, you know, more of a breakdown of, you know, asana for teachers who are very much told, you know, that is how you do a warrior two. And, you know, the last one we just focused on alternative pelvic position.
Yes.
You know, it's like, let's shift it around. Why does it have to be like this? You know, what are the alternatives? And it's is opening new thought pathways for people rather than giving any sort of regimented.
Absolutely.
Efforts.
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely had people I've had people say to me, oh, you should do a training, blah, blah. And my problem would be like, again, it'd probably end up being very much like yours, I think. But you know, I'd struggle to do a 200-hour. I'd be like, right, you're in for a year, mate. You're like, we're gonna just break stuff down. You're gonna try and teach with me. You know.
We were exactly the same. It almost became like a little bit of a challenge to do the 200-hour. It almost seemed like so impossible that we were like, let's do it. And even though the time spent with us is 200 hours, people who've done it have said it's more like the content of the 500-hour, because we open up so many pathways and things, and you know, we'll add on, like, you've got to listen to that podcast, you've got to research that and look at that and look at that, and you know, it's not part of the training, but we think you needed a year to digest it. Yes. You think you need a year to become a teacher. In fact, you need more. And we're really snobby. We're like, if you've only practiced yoga 2 years, you're not coming on our course. You know, we want you to have had time getting to know the practice. More to the point that you need over 2 years for your body to actually adapt to a practice. You know, this is why you'd want to teach something that is new to your body. I don't know. I understand people fall in love with it. I get that, you know, and they're like, this is what I want to do, but I'm like, make it yours then. Make it yours for that 5 or so years, you know, do it for you.
And if you still love it in 5 or so years, do you know what I mean? Go teach. There is, you know, I would say there's been, there was definitely an explosion of teachers around where I am. And then it was kind of like all these people who just suddenly came out, oh, I love yoga. I love it. I'm going to go and do my training, and then come home and I'm going to teach. And then they all begin to disappear again. And then, you know, it's kind of, there's the, you know, me and my wife are still here. My friend Meg is still here. You know, Lizzie, you know, there's a handful we're still here kind of teaching, but, you know, we're the ones who maybe made it look really appealing. I don't know. And then actually people kind of think that would be amazing. And then you kind of go to do your yoga training and you think, oh my God, I can't wait. And then you suddenly realize you have to teach 35 hours of classes a week to break even, and you have to, you know, drive 15 hours a week just to get to all your places, and you're kind of exhausted, and you know, but you have to then show up and paint a smile on, and
you've got to absolutely love it.
You do, and that's literally got to be the thing you love to do. And
we didn't want to become like we struggle with it. We still struggle with the fact that we run a 200-hour. Like, it still makes me go, why are we churning out more yoga teachers when the last thing that the world needs is more yoga teachers, particularly 200-hour teachers? You know, there's so many of them there. But
what the world does need is more yoga teachers who actually know something.
Yes, and that's why we've stuck at it. And we're what we call geographically sensitive. So we will take in applicants from a whole, you know, range of areas rather than very concentrated areas, because you know, there was a 200-hour that was run very locally to me, and they had 30 people in the town signed up, and I'm like, that's just me. That's just greed. You know, you're going to churn out these 30 teachers locally. What does that do to the existing teachers? What does that do? So we'll only take 2 from the same area at a time, nice. Which I feel better doing that, because I think that's important. So we've got at the moment, we've got some from Wiltshire, we've got one from London, we've got,
and is it all online?
No, we've had to do it online so far, so we're doing a hybrid. May is the first month that we can have people in the room as well, so I've had to become a bit tech savvy, and so we've said, you know, whoever's happy to be in the room. As education, we're committed to be in the room from May. If we want to learn at home, we'll film it. You know, they'll be online, but I think a lot of people are quite keen to come into in-person stuff. But
cool.
I didn't want to get it stuck into doing the whole thing online. It was the immersion.
Yeah,
that's cool. You know, if you can't make it live, you can catch up on the recordings. But I think there's a magic of being in the room, and there's stuff that you can't see when you're online, and there's nuances, and you know, being able to just walk around a body is really important.
And actually, again, see things in 3D of like quite how a thigh is rotating in the hip socket, and what the big and little toe knuckles are doing, and all sorts of things like
rather
that.
than just having a skeleton in the middle of the room that
Yeah, absolutely.
Not how it works.
Have you, I think you have, certainly, obviously there's definitely this current more modern, I can't remember what Justin calls it, but like Justin Wolfer and his movement mapping, I can't remember, modern day teachers or modern and there's a whole bunch of people now. There's obviously like the yoga detour and the movement mapping, obviously what you're doing, who are kind of driving this side of things. Have you kind of had much to do with Justin and like the movement mapping side of things?
Yeah, I did his movement mapping course. He came and did one in Kent. I really like what Justin does. I think like he comes from such an overused word, this, he comes from an authentic place, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Like he's intelligent, and you can tell he's really thought about what he wants to do and what he wants to share. And like movement mapping is really clever. I think it's really strong. Like I think it is for someone who's a little bit more geared toward the Ashtanga side of things.
It's definitely a strong practice. Like
it's a really strong practice, and it I did the training, and I don't teach a full movement mapping class. I think it's too strong for my personal students, but like you say, I want to give them longevity and stuff rather than the fancy flow. But it is a good training to do.
Because I was going to do the training, and then COVID hit and everything, and I just never got around to do it in person. And I signed up and I've got it online. I still haven't done it. I've worked through his practices like numerous times, and I do really like them. I love the scorpion flow with the but I mean, do you know what I mean? That, as you say, that's a tough.
It's tough flow.
It's a
but
tough
I think
physical
if
practice.
You come from that Ashtanga element, that background, it's a really good sort of like place to go into that, because there's different practices and they're still very strong and very fluid, and you get a sweat on them, you feel like you've done that. So I think
it is nice. I think that's between. I mean, I'll be honest. Like, so one of my friends has done the yoga detour training, I think. And she's loved it and whatever else. And I still haven't really dived into it at all. And it's something I probably will look at some point. But I'm kind of, I guess, fluffing my way through, trying to do, I guess, something of my own of the similar variety, and trying to put almost like Gary Ward's anatomy in motion, which isn't really a yoga practice in any way. I mean, it's gait based, but trying to work the two of these to kind of sort of align in some way, so things work a bit better for the yoga actually works off the mats. When you walk away from a yoga practice, you've kind of got some of those elements in too. So we probably we've kind of got 10ish minutes or so before we finish, but we can't not kind of just talk a little bit more about, as we've kind of briefly touched on, the Instagram world and of yoga, and what's your favorite hashtag then? What's the one that you tend to use?
Yoga
twat. Cool. And what's this to show? What do you tend to hashtag yoga twat for?
Just every time I fall over, make a face or do something normal, like look like a normal human, not a contortionist or a gymnast or an ex-dancer, like.
I tend to go for the opposite. So mine is hashtag yoga wanker. And I tend to use it when I am doing something which is normally done by a contortionist, ex-dancer type thing. And it's really funny. I don't know how your brain works around this stuff, but for me, I really, really struggle to post things like that these days. So I posted a back bend. Like, by the way, I don't ever practice back bends apart from like, maybe a bridge or like, some, I don't know, locus or just something, back strengthening type work. But I don't do back bends ever. And I did a drop back the other day for the first time in like 3 years. And I felt like, I mean, it looked horrendous, but like, I was a bit like, I have this real aversion to posting stuff like that, because I just feel like the people who tend to do it, and they always like to say, I was never a dancer. Never a dancer. But and then obviously the other one is, whenever it snows, I just get out of my pants and I try to emulate like the beautiful people in the sunsets. And I don't know. I've definitely at times become disillusioned with what yoga is.
Yeah.
I think, and it's hard because actually yoga's cool. Do you know what I mean? Yoga's fine. I remember, I don't know if you've ever listened to Jay Brown and his podcasts or not, but he always says yoga will be fine. Like yoga's not going anywhere. Like it's just the current state of social media where it drives it. And so, yeah, it's kind of where I remember you posting something like, or when I did yoga wanker and you were just like, mine's yoga twat. And I was like, oh, we've clearly got this in like, we're, I don't know, opposite sides of the country or different sides of the country, but we're both just somehow managed to come along the same path at the same time. Yeah. Like it's a tricky one.
It does, like, it frustrates me. That I feel exactly the same. I'm like, oh God, I'm going to put up this sexy move now. I'm going to put up this thing because I know that it will get a reaction. I know that people will be impressed, which is kind of like, so it makes me cringe to do it, but you kind of like occasionally have to sometimes to remind people that actually I can do that shit. But it's not what yoga's about. And then you've got this like, your own ego battle and everything else. But I think there's almost like an expectation that people want to see it. So we'll try and do it in my most unattractive outfit with, a bit of muffin top hanging out or just, something that is just like.
It's harder because, I mean, I don't know if you've felt the same or not, but I mean, I have, and I'm going to hands up. I try to always do it as tongue in cheek as possible, but like done like a bum shot or something like that. But I always kind of do it with like some made up Rumi quote or something like that, or I put hashtag Rumi quote or whatever, because that's always what people tend to like to do. But it's I don't know. It to me it feels like there's this constant drive in social media and in yoga to be like sexier and sexier and it kind of grinds with me because for me that's not what yoga is. Do you know what I mean? It's that introspective side, which is obviously, I mean, I'm sure they would tell you that's exactly what their practice is as well. It's just social media is like the place where they get their followings and whatever else, but it's a tricky one.
But the thing is like by putting up that stuff, which is fine, and people do whatever they want to do, and I'm not going to judge them for that. But if you've got your sexiest little outfit on in this beautiful setting, that's going to pull in the people that think that it is that. Exactly. And they're going to be drawn to that. They're going to go and do the 200-hour teacher trainings after practicing for 6 months, and they're going to continue to spread that message. And and they're the ones that, again, generalizing, but it's true, are going to be hurting people and delivering the, limited information because they don't have the practice to back it up. So I think sometimes it does just need calling out.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I think it's just sometimes quite fun to talking about calling out. And again, going back to, I meant to bring it up earlier and I've written it down and forgot to come back to it. But, going back to some of the Instagram world and their how to do things. And, if you want ankle mobility, and I saw a video the other day from, I'm going to say anyway, like Chelsea Yoga, and it was all about how to get greater ankle dorsiflexion. And, and you read through the comments, everyone's like, oh my God, this is incredible, blah, blah. And I just, from my own perspective of having spent too much money studying anatomy and time, and, and I was just watching it going, that does nothing. Do you know what I mean? You might get an ankle which dorsiflexes better. I mean, I don't think you would because of how she was doing it, but but you're kind of completely bypassing how that joint interacts with your foot and how your joint interacts with your knee and how that's going to affect everything. And it's, I want to do one of them. Like I've just seen that Instagram have ripped off TikTok, so you can now do the like side by side screens. So
you should. It does do this is the problem when people who, come into teaching, perhaps have never felt what it's like to have a limitation in their body. They've, or maybe they've not been dancers or whatever, but it's like, you've certainly not got any limitations in your body. Certainly does things that normal people would just dream about doing. So if you've never felt stiff, you've never had a joint issue, or you've never injured yourself or anything, then you can't, can't teach that stuff anymore. But Yeah, all those other things that are like, oh, if you've got tight hamstrings, do this.
Yeah.
And they're like, the deepest forward bend known to man.
Just drop into the splits, you'll be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. That'll fix your tight hamstrings.
So did you, I guess, squeezing this at the end, and I probably should have asked earlier, but with your, I guess, a nice place to round up, kind of thinking about your practice and what you teach, and you said you came into yoga through childbirth, essentially, not through childbirth, that's be weird, but like from having birth a child, that led you into probably, I guess, maybe some postnatal yoga and then, or whatever. But have you had like a history of injuries and whatever else that you've ended up developing this practice and this school of thought that you and your homie have developed because of your journey to try to move in less pain?
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I mean, like I wasn't a massively physical person, before I did yoga. I had the odd I was only 22 when I started. Mm-hmm. So, I had done the odd bit of stuff when I was younger, but no dance, no gymnastics, banned from dancing in public, actually. That's one of the things that my husband says to me. He's like, please sit on the bar stool. No one needs to see that. I do not dance in public. It's embarrassing. So I'm really open about, I've had 2 kids, people have seen my journey, sort of like I talk through my second pregnancy and, my recovery from that. I've talked through, I've had a hernia operation, which I've talked through. I've had I'm very open about my injuries. Yeah. I'm very open about, I tore my hamstring when I was drunk, doing drunk yoga, trying to put my leg behind my head, and I'm quite open about all this stuff. So it's like, I think being quite normal and being, naturally quite stiff and having gone on this journey and knowing when I pushed it too far and being like, oh, I think I can give people valuable lessons with their own bodies from this. Because if it's stupid to maintain that you're always in optimal, perfect health, whether that's physical or mental health or whatever. It's all about being as real as you can be, I think, because then people can connect with that.
Absolutely.
I
mean, I don't know if I get quite often people say, but how you can't have any problems, you can't have pain because you move like you do, and and it's, you can do all the jazzy shit, but you can still have pain and whatever else. And do you know what I mean? I think for me, the reason probably my journey has been quite similar to yours has ended up being because like knee pain, foot pain, or like ankle problems from a big blowout, shoulders just blown out from snowboarding, loads of injuries, and yoga's helped put me back together. But it's just that yoga practice has ended up developing into, whether it be ranges of motion, whether it be, anatomy and motion, whatever it might be, breath work, all of that stuff's helped to try to put me back together from there. And I think that's what, probably Justin, Cecily, fuck, I was well wrong. And probably you guys, like, it's all about, let's like put you back together in a way that you can then be comfortable in your body.
Exactly. And I'll be quite open. Like the other week I ran too fast. Like I don't run, I ran too fast. We would went to my friend's boot camp. I was like, I'll come, and he did like a little sprint, and I ran too fast, and I felt my hamstring ping. And I was like, there you go, nice little hamstring tendinopathy. And so everyone got to watch me for the next 4 weeks, having to totally adjust my teaching practice, to be like, oh yeah, pissed off my hamstring, I'm going to need to do this, and I can't do that. You guys are going to have to do that. And it's just like, it just makes it so normal, because there's so much doom and gloom around with injury, isn't there? Where people are like, oh, I can't have my legs straight anymore for a little while. And it's like, so what? You're not actually going to lose flexibility. You're not going to do, any long-term stuff to your body. You're going to work around this.
Yeah.
When it fixes, when it heals, then we start going, I think people are really scared about this stuff, but it's like, my knee's horrible at the moment. I've got a really painful knee, and I'll talk about it all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the same with me. I always try and, You know, it's a case of, I'm the opposite. I'm suddenly feeling better. My right hip is suddenly, I've had a big shift in it. It's like, oh, I can sit cross-legged properly again. That feels nice. But yeah, I think it's just good to highlight those kind of, guess what? Just because we're yoga teachers, we're still fucking human.
Exactly. And getting older as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know,
37 in 3 weeks.
Oh, yeah. Oh, 38.
The wife's nearly 40, so you know we're all kicking on. I know. If Iyengar could do that shit at 94 or whatever, we'll be fine. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much for this. Before we do go though, I just want you to give us a quick shout to where people can find you, or if there's anything you want to point them towards. By all means, just do so now, because I'll put it all in the notes at the bottom. But
I think obviously we've got the immersion coming up, which you can find on yogareloaded.org. So all the links are in there. So it's going to be over 4 days. It'll be online. It will be recorded, so you don't need to be there live. And if you're a yoga teacher who's a little bit curious about coming away or learning a bit more than you learned on your 200-hour, or just wanting to perhaps go down some different avenues to modernize your teaching, your understanding, then that's what we've got coming up.
Sweet. And if they want to find you on Instagram, just so they can get the same hashtags.
This is where everyone,
I'm sure if they just search for hashtag yoga twat.
My Instagram name is so stupid because it's not easy. It's not like Hannah Stewart Yoga. So.
Well, I'll just say it and I'll just write it on there so they can find it.
Hankatbarles.
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 Cool. Well, I'll stick that in the notes so people can see it. And yeah, wicked. Well, thank you so much for waffling with me for an hour about just yoga and crap. And hopefully once all this lockdown stuff's out of the way, we can perhaps actually meet up in real life. That's just cool. All right then. I'm just gonna stop and we'll just carry on chatting. So I'll just edit this bit and merge it together, I hope. So yeah, thanks so much, and take care of yourself. See you soon.